Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to Microsoft Project for Beginners. This is Lesson 10, and today we're going to be looking at changes and change orders and change analysis. The last few videos we've looked at updating and recovery, and I'll leave some links in the description below, and you can always go back to some of those videos, or you can go right back to the beginning if you subscribe and click on my playlist, Microsoft Project for Beginners. I have several playlists, but this is the pretty sort of basic one that leads you up to this point. So you can always go back and watch previous videos. So I've been trying to keep it simple. I have a series of tasks here. So, if you wanted to, you could even create this or something similar to this to get a good sense of what's going on. In this particular file, I've already done an update. This is actually from lesson 7. So this has basically been updated, this particular file. And if you're not sure what that means, I'll give you a quick heads up on it. But it means that we've set the baseline so that we can see how we're doing compared to how we planned. And this particular video being on changes, we want to add a change into the schedule and see how does it affect everything else. This particular schedule right now, we can check it out and see, is it delayed? Is it over budget? What's going on? We can quite simply go to what I call the square icon box here, right click. This is how you can quickly switch between screens. And I can go to the variant screen. And in the variant screen, I can see that we are 4 days behind schedule. So the project is now 4 days behind schedule. I could also check the cost screen and see the variance in cost. Right now, we have a $4,800 variance from what we planned. In the baseline, I added a bunch of activities, which added a bunch of costs to the project, including I added some resources to the summary task here. And we could always check, going to the left, right-clicking, going to the resource sheet. We could check how are we doing with our individual resources. Now, you may be used to looking and seeing this, and you created this, and I created this in this particular project, $100 an hour, 50 cents for drywall square foot, $80 an hour for laborers. You can always in this screen, if you have created resources and costs and you've updated it, you can go to the cost screen by clicking and right-clicking there, and then you can see you've set a baseline and you have a variance. So I can see that I have $3,200 and $1,600 on these two resources. The rest are okay. That's because I applied them to the whole project. If you recall, I was paying the site super $100 an hour. It's 4 days behind schedule. That's 32 hours. 32 times 100, 3,200. The PM, I assigned 50% to this project, so that's why that is 1,600. That would be, in essence, the equivalent of 16 hours. 32 hours, 50% of that time, $100 an hour. 16 times 100, $1,600. So that's where that's coming from. I'm going to go back to my Gantt chart. I'm going to look at this project quickly. So right now we have a 4-day variance. So I'm back at the Gantt chart. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to go to my variance screen again. I see I'm 4 days behind. So maybe before we start to put the change in, I'm going to right click and I'm going to insert column. I'm going to type D for duration. I'm going to put the duration column there. And I'm going to go to my tracking Gantt. So I usually like to go to the variance tracking Gantt. Should have done that first, but that's okay. We can adjust things. So there's my tracking Gantt. Tracking Gantt, so there I am. There's my variance screen. I've got durations in here. So maybe I'm going to try and get that 4 days back before we insert the change order in it, just so that you can see how the variance moves up or down or back and forth. So right here we can see that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 days on that week. It's critical because it's in red. It's the longest path through the network, right? So I'm going to shorten this one up and I'm going to make it 6 days. So let's see, 6 days. You can see that 6 days has brought our project back on time. This one turned critical. It wasn't critical before. Now we have 2 critical paths, so we better not have either one of these be lengthened, or it would have an impact on our overall project. But our project currently is back on track. And because it was a variable cost that we put on the summary task, let's see how we're doing now cost-wise. So if you recall before, we were actually, what was the amount? We had 32 hours, 3,200, and then we had that resource 3,200, and we had the site super and the PM. So the site super, I think, was 3,200 and the PM was 1,600. So that actually went back to 0. But you know what happened? This one, task number 5, it must have the laborers on them. And how do I know that? Well, let's go take a look. Let's go to the entry view, and it does. Task number 5 has the laborers. So now it's taking 4 days less than we thought. So if that was true and we didn't do it by adding extra laborers, that would be great. But if we did add extra laborers, then we should show that back in this particular activity. For now, I'm going to leave that. So at least we know where our costs are. And again, if you're not too sure how I knew that, I could slide to the left, go to the resource sheet. I right click, go to the resource sheet, and then I would see that laborers, there's where my savings is. All right, so I'm going to slide to the left, right click, getting you used to just flicking between screens. That's half the battle in Microsoft Project, knowing what screen you're in. I'm in the Gantt chart screen right now, and I'm going to click again, right click. I'm going to go to the tracking Gantt. There we are. So that's where I am. So what I want to do now is I want to insert a change into my schedule. And I'm going to insert this change just above task 7. All right, so I'm going to maybe make this change fairly simple. I'm going to insert 3 rows above task 7. So I highlight task 7. I have those 3 rows highlighted. I right click, and it's like Excel. I'm going to go insert task. And now I've just inserted 3 rows, 3 tasks. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to call this here change order number 1. And maybe I will call this task CO1A and task CO1B. Okay, so I created 2 tasks. This would be, of course, whatever it is, right? You know, if you're installing a bulkhead, it would be maybe frame metal studs, bulkhead, rough-in pot lights. You might have 6 or 7 activities there. So for now, I'm just going to keep it simple. And what I want to do is I want to make this a heading. And we actually call it a fragnet, a fragmented network that we're inserting into the schedule. That's the official name for it. That one I didn't make up. All right, so I'm going to right-click. And you see how it says it's now created its own summary task. And we've talked about work breakdown structures in earlier videos, so that's what we're doing. We're making it nice and clear where this change order is, and then we would give it a time factor. So maybe the time factor might be 2 days for this and 3 days for that. All right, and now you notice, very important when you've done this, that what's going on here, I'll just narrow this up so you can see a little bit more in the Gantt chart. These 2 activities that you inserted, they're at the beginning of the project. They will just go to the start date of the project. So whatever you've got under project information as your start date, it goes right back there, right? That's not where we want it. We want it where it's impacting, or where we found out about it, where we're going to start it. And so I'm going to highlight these 2, and this has to be done before this one, let's say. So this has to be done before this one. So I'm going to link them together. So I could highlight them. If I had 10 activities underneath that, I would highlight all 10. If they were one after the other, I would probably just go here and go link. Or in this case, I could just type in number 9 in that row there. And you can see now they're linked together. Now the question is, what are they related to? And I'm going to say that this one here, remember we don't link to headings. Best practice not to link to headings. Microsoft Project will let you. See, I could put this here and I could do that and it'll move it, but that's not the best practice. You want to have activities linked to activities. So I'm going to link this to number 6 and I'm going to type 6 there, and that should move that over. Now, I might say I want to have that linked to number 6. Maybe I want that, if I double click on the activity, I've got more flexibility here. I could go to predecessors. So I double clicked on the activity, it brought up the task information box. I can go to where it says predecessors, click on that. You know, I could change the relationship type. I could have it as start to start. I could have it a finish to finish. I'm going to keep the finish to start. And again, oops, the finish to start. And I'm going to put a lag though. I'm going to put maybe a negative lag of 2 days here. Now, depending who you do work for, if it's in construction, it's civil projects, they might not like a negative lag. They might require that you put a start to start with a positive lag. So you can get very similar effect that way just by doing that if you need to. But that's how you can control it. And I suggest, you know what, you can practice with just a few activities, just their different relationships, and try it. Try it and see how it looks. Like, for example, if I go finish to start minus 2 days, right, and I've got it linked to number 6, I'm going to click OK, and that pulls that back, right? So it's pulling that back. You can see sort of how that brought that back into play there. Which is fine. If that's when you plan to start that activity, then that's perfectly acceptable. The other choice that you might have is you could have double clicked here, as I said, and watch where this is, right? Watch the position it is. Let me just see. Yeah, that's going to be on Thursday. So I'm going to create this with a I'm going to create this with a 6-day positive lag. All right, so I'm going to go start to start. And I might get this wrong and I can play with it. Start to start, and I'm going to go 6 days, positive lag. And this should make it start, which one am I connected with? Oh, I connected it with that one. I thought it was that one. Okay, that's fine. I connected it with number 6 over here. So that is that one. Yes, okay. That's fine. No, I've got it. Oh, row number 6. Yeah, ID number 6, task 5. That's where I'm getting confused. Anyways, I've got it with ID number 6, which is up here, task 5. All right, so I'm going to click OK, start to start. And you see how it put it over there from the start of this activity. So it put it more than I wanted. No problem. Just go back, double click. And I think I wanted it 2 days back of where it currently is. And there, now it brought it back, right? So it gives you very similar, like everything is in the same date. And this is actually following a more positive protocol, best practice, shall we say. Negative lags, they're somewhat discouraged in certain types of projects and in certain environments. So why don't we leave it at that then, seeing we put that in. But you could do a negative lag. There's no sort of negative lag police unless, like I said, you're in heavy industrial or civil projects. And then your contract might discourage that. Okay, so I've got this one here, and I put down as predecessors 7 and 6. All right, so I've got 7 and 6, which are these two activities here as predecessors. And you know what? I'm going to keep that, 7 and 6, and I'm going to put comma, and I'm going to put 10, which is this one. Because right now, this is not showing how it's affecting the project. Right now, the project is on time. So if I just looked at this, I'd say, oh, it's all fine, it's all good. No, it's not. This is an open end, and we've talked about open ends before, and it's because it's open, it's not telling you how it impacts the project. So you have to make sure that you make that connection here so that it's going to push this out. And remember, the bottom bar represents the baseline, and the top bar represents what's changed. And so we're doing a change order, and we haven't done it yet, like we haven't updated it yet, but we're inserting it into the schedule. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in here number 10 and press enter, and then we should see this push out. So now I know what this is impacting on the schedule. And if I go back and I check my variance screen, so I click on the square icon box, I right click, and I go to the variance screen. I pull this over to the side, and I should see start variance and finish variance, right? So now I can see that this is impacting the project by 3 days. And if I just zoom this up, I can see Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? So to the end of Thursday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, there's your 3 days. You should be able to visually count it, and you can see what it tells you here. So it's useful to have both those screens up when you're reviewing that to see the impact. So I know that this activity, now the other thing you want to be careful of, this activity took 5 days, right? This change order. 2 days plus 3 days, 5 days. And a lot of people that, even in construction, experienced people, they'll say, okay, so the change is 5 days. I want an extension for 5 days. But it's not. It's actually an extension of 3 days, because 2 of those days were in an area of float. They didn't impact anything. So this thing went for 2 days before it impacted your project. And this is why you actually need to check the impact of changes on a schedule, because in your head you might think, oh, this is going in an area of float where I've got flexibility. It's not on the critical path. You might be right. You might be right for a period of time, like maybe it had 20 days of float, but the change is 30 days long. Well, then it would push your project 10 days. So you want to know how much it's impacting the project. And that's why you want to be able to insert a change to see that impact. Maybe a contemplated change. You haven't got it signed off yet, and you're thinking about it, and you want to see what the impacts are. You might want to look at that. Maybe that means that, well, if we do this, the client really still wants to finish on time, so that means we'd have to work several weekends. Can we do that? What's the cost implication of that? How's that affect the cost of the change? Give the client some choices. What is it that they're after? How do you know? You know, and there's a lot of there's projects where nobody really cares that much, and that's fine. But then there's projects where they do care. The other thing is, it may have also affected your cost, right? So now we've got a $1,040 variance. Why? Because we saved on that last change with this, but then we moved out 3 days again. So the change is actually affecting us $2,560 and that extra $1,040, because what's happening now is that the site super and the PM they're longer. And so you have to look at that and consider that into the equation as well. Whenever you have a project, you have to think that there are variable costs involved in the project, and they're fixed costs. And sometimes the fixed costs don't change. Sometimes they do. Depends on what it is. Maybe you've delayed a contractor and now they're making a claim that you've delayed them. That might, even though it's a fixed cost, that might end up getting changed. But a variable cost, for sure, if I slide to the left, I go to my resource sheet, and I look, then I can see, okay, so I've got this going on, right? So I've got this $2,400, and I got this $1,200. So that's that $3,600 change that's going on, right? And that's the difference between this and that, and that's why the project has that 1,160, was it? Something like that. So if we go back to our Gantt chart and check our cost screen, and see how you're just flipping back and forth, 1,040. Okay, so we've got these adjustments that are taking place between variable costs. No fixed cost changes because I didn't change anything here fixed cost wise, but you have to know that these things are moving. And what's really nice about this is it's telling the story of what's happening on your project, so you have a good idea of what's going on and what the implications are with regards to time and what the implications are with regards to money. Of course, we could then, if this actually happened, we move our status date, then we can update it, and then we can look at using the direct method of recovery like I told you in the previous video, that how you recover the time. And I'll put in the links, as I said, in the actual show notes here. And if you enjoyed this video and it's helpful for you for Microsoft Project, as I said, I've got lots of videos on my playlist on Microsoft Project. And if you're interested in construction and construction management and site management, cost control and those things, I've got a lot of videos, construction business management on that as well. So I'm Tom Stephenson, hoping that you'll subscribe, leave a comment, click notifications, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.